Hey everyone, it's Thomas here. So today I'm going to do the second part of my Focal video. Originally I actually filmed the video already, but I wanted to add a bit more stuff to it, so I'm just going to record the audio portion and voice over the video. So forgive me if it doesn't sync up correctly, but I'm just too lazy to sit in front of a camera again and record the whole video again. So for those of you who haven't seen the first video, that's more of a review, and this video is more of a chat about Focal speakers, right? I think this will probably be my last Focal speaker, as I doubt I can afford the Sopro series. And this video is about me spending time with the 926 speakers and what I did to get it sound the way I like it. So in my past video, I will make blanket statements like, you need a lot of power to drive these Focal speakers, else it'll sound harsh and so forth. And I say this because of experience, right? But the problem is that the internet is so big, the stereo world is so big that, any blanket statement I make can have consequences. Meaning that, when people look at my video, it's not like if I say 926 is really, really good, people rush out to buy it. But if I start saying something bad about something, it might affect people's decision when it comes to buying, right? So when I made this video, I wanted to be as objective as possible. First of all, I want to address that issue here about needing high power amp to drive Focal speakers. So I called my friend who owns the 836 and 1028. I said, you know what? I remember you had this 55 watt Onix integrated amp. Fantastic integrated amp, by the way. And can you plug it to your 836 or and the 1028 and tell me how does it sound? So he did it. He called me and said, you know what? It doesn't sound that harsh. So I said, you know what? Push the volume. It's everything sounds smooth when it's low volume. Push it to about 88 dB. And he said, yep, it's definitely very harsh, and it's not a pleasant experience. I said, maybe the problem is that we're using fancy speaker cables, because a lot of people out there say that they have good experience with Focal with low power amp, right? And maybe it's just the speaker cable that we're using that's causing the problem. So I said, you know what, go instead of using your $3,000 speaker cable, go use a $5 speaker cable. So he plugged it in and he said, yeah, you know what, it's less harsh, I can push the volume a bit more, but the problem is that everything sounds so flat now. If that's the case, why am I bothering buying a Focal speaker? I might as well buy a different speaker. Well, yeah, I guess good point there. So what I did, I went over his place. I brought home this Onix 55 watt integrated amp, and I plugged it into my 926, and I say, yeah, it sounds good at low volume, not too harsh, but once I push it to 87 dB, 88 dB, that's where it gets a bit painful, right? You know, the way I see it is that bass coming from a low power amp is like slapping your hand together, while bass coming from a high power amp is it's like you're punching your palm here. Uh, like both will sound okay at a certain volume, sound very similar. But once you push the volume, yeah, that's where the bass difference comes in. And it's important for when it comes to sounding harsh or not harsh, right? But I was determined. I said that, you know what, there's so many people out there that can drive a car with low power amp. There must be something that I'm doing wrong. So, okay, forget about all the expensive cables I'm using. Let's go look for the normal cables. So I tried a few cables. So that's when I start taking out my cables. Let's start with the Ultralink cable. So I plug it in. It's a bit too bright, and I actually messaged my friend. I said, hey, by the way, I'm trying to ultralink with the Focal. And before I can say anything more, he actually messaged back and said, oh, ultralink? Nah, that's a very bright speaker cable, so that's not the right one with Focal. So no, that's where experience comes in, right? After a while, we have an idea what kind of speaker cable, what is its characteristic. Uh, so after trying a few, the signal cable that I got was the best one. Okay, so signal cable, I felt like, okay, is good enough. I have to get rid of all my Siltech cables. I had to use these Vanderhole interconnects. I guess I'll list it somewhere in the description. And that's where I go like, okay, so this interconnect with the speaker cable works. As long as I don't push the volume up to 88 dB, I am okay. So I said, that means there must be a lot of amps out there that people use that, in the 50, 60 watt zone that it still will work okay with the Focal 926. Now, so somebody came over to my place because he wanted to purchase the Focal 926, right? And I had this Cary Audio. This one's about 75 watts. So he was also interested in that. So you know what? I hooked it up, and I wanted to show him how does it sound with this Class AB integrated amp. And in the beginning, right away, we plugged it in. It was like, oh gosh, it's a bit harsh, right? But for me, I said, yeah, it's no big deal because I know that the speaker cable that we're using at that point was the one that's my own reference speaker cable. It's made of platinum and silver. This is like a retail 2K suggested price speaker cable, right? And I know its characteristic. It's very bright, very sharp. So I knew that it was not a good match with the Focal 926. Because before he came over, I was using it with the Accuphase. It's fine. That's no problem. And that's when I say, no big deal. I just change it to the signal cable and it'll be fine, right? And for me, it's such an obvious thing. But then for him, it was a big shock. It was a bit shocking to see that by me changing a simple cable, the harshness dropped by a good 30%, right? So that actually surprised me a bit too. Surprised me in the sense that what I take for granted for other people is like a big shock. Because if you look at the signal cable, it's about 100, 200 bucks new, and you look at the other one, the whiter, which is the silver and platinum cable, it's close to it's about 2,000 suggested price. So you're looking at a 10 times price gap, right? You expect to hear a big difference when you plug it in. And for me, it's, I hear it day to day, so I know it's very normal. But for him, it was like, whoa, there was a significant difference. So much so, he actually bought that cable off me right away because it was a good match with the Focal 926 and the Cary Audio. So for me to get it sounding the way I like it, I had to use the Accuphase P266 and the C222 with the signal cable as speaker cable, and then the Vanderhole as interconnect. Now my Accuphase here, for some strange reason, it works very well with speakers that are very bright. For example, when I had the GX300 monitor audio, now that is a bright speaker. And I couldn't tame it until I used the Accuphase on it. But that's a different review for another day. So in the next thing I did, okay, so just to recap, so with the Onix A55, it worked well with the signal cable and the Vanderhole. So it's the same thing for the Cary Audio too, right? So you have to play with interconnects at this point. And the next thing I did, I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll put a $5 speaker cable on it. Yeah. I mean, it's okay, but the signal cable was definitely better. So the last test I did was, I say a lot of people won't have the same setup as me, meaning having both a speaker for just listening to music and a speaker for home theater. Most people would plug it to a stereo, just a regular receiver, right? So I have a Pioneer receiver, it's Class D, rated at 110 watts. But when you talk about receiver, watts it's not the same as a stereo amp. So I plugged it in. I'm like, yep. It's actually worse than the Onix the 55 watt, even though it's rated at 110 watt. I couldn't last long with it. It was just very bright and very harsh, right? But so if you look at the comments in my past video, people do have good success with the Focal with a low power amp. So that's why it's a very interesting speaker, the Focal. You have a bunch of people who say, I tried it, it doesn't sound harsh, and then you have another bunch of people who tried it and say, look man, I've been trying to tame these speakers for a very long time. Now, I have auditioned 6 pairs of Focal in my lifetime. I have auditioned the 836, the 926 now, the 1028, and the Sopra 2. Now the Sopra 2 was silky smooth. I heard it on combined with a Mcintosh 452 and a C48. It left a very strong impression. It was something that I really enjoyed. I love that kind of sound, and you won't expect that from a bright speaker like Focal, but no, it's not true. The Sopra series, at least I don't know, was it the combo with the amp and preamp? It was just smooth. So then the next Focal that I listened to is the Focal Alto. That was with a $75,000 setup. This is very interesting. I think the Alto is the older models, right? And the first thing that hit me was that it was very realistic. So completely opposite from the Sopra I heard. It was driven by a YBA setup, and the first few minutes I heard it, like the instruments are so distinctively clear, everything sounds so real that it changed my mind regarding what I like. In the past I say I like speakers when they're warm, they're very musical, but this is the other extreme where it's very real. The clarity is amazing. You can one word distinctively hear all the instruments, and I like that. So that's why I say going forward, when I look for speakers, I'm not just going to start looking for very musical, very warm speakers. The other side of it caught my interest. It was very, you have to hear it. It's just incredible when it's like set up this way. So the last pair of Focal that I listened to were the super expensive one, the $100,000 ones, and even some that are and the model below, right? I heard it about 3 times. I spent a bit of time with it, meaning that I get to compare MQA and high-res files on it. Actually, we're going back and forth on it. Uh, I happen to know friends who have access to this kind of equipment, so I get to listen to it very high-end equipment from time to time. And that setup, all I remember, yes, it sounded great, but it has zero harshness. So Focal can sound bright, but it can be the other extreme, sounding silky smooth. So that's why when you go on the net, you'll read a bunch of people saying that it is one, like, very harsh, very bright, and the other part, is not at all. And people who, if you don't get a chance to hear both sides of it, it will baffle you. It'll be sound a bit strange as to why it is the opposite of what you heard. One thing I learned from playing with stereo equipment for a very long time, it's that in the stereo world, 1 plus 1 is not equals to 2. A bright speaker cable plus a bright amp with a bright speaker does not necessarily equal bright sounding output, right? If anything, synergy is the most important thing, and it's hard. Even though I have experience with, let's say, this speaker cable work well with this speaker, you never know until you try it, because there are many times where I was surprised by it. For example, the Monitor Audio RS6. Now that is a bright speaker, and I thought that if I used the whiter cable, which is the silver and platinum cable, which is a very bright cable, I would get a very bright sound. And it was not that, because the whiter cable was able to bring a lot of bass too. It actually balanced out very well compared to my other YBA diamond cable. That is supposed to be a more smooth cable, but in this situation, the whiter cable was better. So that's why I say it's hard for me to give advice to people what to buy, because you don't know until you try. So the Focal 926, one's unfortunate part is that I never get to hear it with it being fully broken in. I already sold it since I'm trying other things now. So yeah, till next time.